Hello, boys and girls of Credit Union Land, and welcome to episode 38 of the CUInsight Experience. My name is Randy Smith. I'm one of the co-founders of CUInsight.com, and it is my job on the show to have conversations with the best and the brightest of the credit union community. I get to pick their brains and see if we can't find a few nuggets that we can all learn from. My guest on today's show is Amy Downs. Amy is the president and CEO of Allegiance Credit Union in Oklahoma City. She's also a motivational speaker, IronMan, and a whole lot more. In this episode, we have a wide-ranging conversation that will pull at your heartstrings and also motivate you not only to survive, but thrive after difficult situations, difficult times in life. This conversation with Amy just amazed me. We discussed the connection of her credit union to her community. There was a ton of leadership and life hacks. We actually kept talking after the show because we both share similar beliefs in living life intentionally. There's also something that we both do first thing every morning. I must admit, Amy a lot earlier than I do, that we get into in that section of the show as well. As always, we wrap it up with the leadership and the life hacks. There was a ton there, and then have some fun with the rapid fire questions. Amy and I actually kept talking after the show. I couldn't get enough. We stopped recording and just kept talking and have actually been messaging back and forth since. So without further ado, I give you my conversation with Amy Downs. Enjoy. Amy, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being on today.
I am so excited to be here.
I was so looking forward to this conversation. A few months back, I had the time to spend some time with one of your team members in Kenya on a DE trip. And we actually did a podcast from there with Lois, but Brent Rempe. And while we were there, we spent a lot of time on buses and together and, going around the country. And I don't want to say he was telling me your story for the first time in the story of the credit union, but it was such a refresher and, inspiring story that I came home and asked Brent to make the introduction because we'd never had a chance to talk before and couldn't wait to have you on the show. So thank you so very, very much again for being here today.
Absolutely. I'm a big fan of the podcast. And I caught that podcast that you did in Kenya. That was awesome.
It was a funny one. We were sitting on paint cans, so yes, it was awesome.
Right.
If you don't mind, I just want to jump right into it. And if you could, and you don't mind going down this path, could you remind listeners what happened on April 19th, 1995 and how the credit union and you were affected?
Absolutely. And it's been 25 years. So there may be people out there that don't remember or weren't even born. It was a typical day at the credit union. Beautiful spring morning in April 19th, 1995. Our credit union was located in the Federal Building in downtown Oklahoma City. My office was on the third floor, front and center of the building, and I was sitting just a few feet from the front glass windows. And around 9 o'clock, I went to sit down at my desk. The rest of the supervisors were meeting with our CEO. So they had all gone down to another part of the building for a meeting, and I went to sit down. If I had walked over to the window, if I had looked down on the street, I would have seen the Ryder truck. And I would have seen Timothy McVeigh leaving the Ryder truck as he detonated the bomb that went off. That bomb that went off killed 168 people, including 18 of our 33 employees of the Federal Employees Credit Union. For me, I was sitting at my desk and I was just getting ready to talk to a coworker of mine who was 6 months pregnant. And I turned to ask her what she needed, and I never even got a chance to say anything because that's when the bomb went off. And I just remember, feeling and just hearing this powerful, powerful roar and thinking to myself, wondering, did I just get shot in the back of the head? Because when you work for a financial institution, you're always a little worried about robbery. And that was the only thing I could think of, was that maybe somebody had just walked into the credit union and I had been shot, because it was that powerful and everything went black and I could feel myself rushing, falling. And I was falling 3 floors. I landed and was buried under about 10 feet of rubble instantly. So I couldn't see anything. I couldn't move. It was very hard to breathe. It was hot. And all I could do was lay there. And, at first there were people screaming, and then it was very quiet. And It took about 45 minutes before I heard voices, and I heard some men, and they were saying, let's look for the daycare babies. And I remember when I heard that, I started screaming. And I remember the rescuer that found me, he said, I hear you, child. How old are you? And I sort of had this little mini, ethical thing of, do I lie and say I'm 2 years old, or do I tell him I'm 28, So I said, I'm sorry, I'm 28. And he started screaming, we have a live one, we have a live one. So they came to try to find where I was located to dig me out. And when they had to follow the sound of my voice because they couldn't see me. And when they found where I was located, my hand was actually sticking out of the rubble pile, and they found my hand, and I'm thinking they're just going to pull me out. Somebody's grabbed my hand, they're getting ready to pull me out. I didn't really understand how bad I was buried. And about that time, though, I heard other men and their voices, and people were yelling, there's another bomb. There's another bomb. Let's go. Let's go. There's another bomb. And so my rescuers just said, we need to get some more equipment. We'll be right back. But I knew what was going on.
You could hear it.
Yeah. I just immediately started telling them my name and telling them to call my family, tell them I love them. And with that, they were gone. And that began a time period of about 45 minutes where my reality was I was waiting to die. There was another bomb that was going to go off. And I had, that time to really reflect on my life. And I just remember, sitting there thinking, I'm getting ready to die. Like, I'm getting ready to die. And the reality hitting me that I have never even lived my life. I was 355 pounds. I had dropped out of college. Well, I had flunked out of college. I really had no purpose in my life. The only good thing about my life was the credit union.
Yeah.
That really was the only good thing in my life. And I just, as I laid there buried under all that rubble, just thinking, if I could have a do-over, if I could just, if I just got a second chance, I would do it different. I would not take it for granted, and I would really live my life.
There's something interesting. It just was sticking in my head. Like, you hear of people having near-death experiences, but they tend to be a flash or a moment. Mm-hmm. You were sitting there for 45 minutes. I mean, I can't even imagine all the thoughts that were going through your mind. I mean, you talk about, I assume almost you wrote a book while you were sitting there of everything, and
right.
you had done what you
right.
wanted.
I mean, it was a lot of time. And then even when the rescuers came back and started working to get me out, it took them 6.5 hours. And the building was extremely unstable. So the rescuers, they were risking their lives, and they kept having to stop about every 20 minutes to decide whether or not they were going to amputate my leg, because there was an emergency physician waiting to do the amputation, because it would have gotten everybody out more quickly and safely if they would have amputated my leg. So even when they came back after that 45 minutes, I still never really had that reassurance that I was going to make it out.
Yeah.
And, I would even ask every now and then, are you guys going to be able to get me out? And the fireman would always answer me the same way. He always would say, we're going to do our best. And later when I met him, I really gave him a hard time for that. I'm like, seriously, I think you should lie. I think you should just tell people, yes, I'm going to get you out, because I'm going to do my best. I mean, what if that's not good enough?
I was going to ask you if you had the chance to meet the fireman that rescued you, and that you could hear his voice the whole time, I'm assuming, but
right.
Yeah. It's unbelievable. Doing the research for our conversation today, and I'll link to, you've been on quite a bit of media, some of the other podcasts. I don't want to spoil what we have coming up here, but some of the other ones were very cool. And it's about that second chance at life that you've had. But to say that you not only survived, but you've thrived since then. Could you tell us about, how you walked away from that, how you changed your life?
Right. Well, when they pulled me out, and, I finally came out from the rubble, they put me on the back of a gurney. They took me out of the back of the federal building. And I remember that morning had been this beautiful spring morning, but now it was cold and dark and gray. It was starting to rain. It looked like the middle of winter. But I will never forget looking up at the sky, taking that first breath of fresh air, and I could see, and just promising God, I will never live my life the same. And I just have held on to that. And it was not easy because, after the bombing, there was a lot of junk to work through. We had 18 of our employees killed. We had to rebuild a credit union. I mean, it was just unbelievable, the stuff we had to go through for really a few years.
Yeah.
And so it's not like I walked out of the hospital and hit this campaign, to change my life. But that was the catalyst. I mean, it started that thought of, hey, I'm here to live. My friends were killed, right? I'm here. If I'm here, I should live. They would want me to live my life. And so, working through all of that took some time, but I slowly started getting traction. And the first thing that I did was to go back to school.
Okay.
For whatever reason that bothered me when I was buried alive, that was one of the things that I thought about. I also thought about the fact that I'd never had a child. I didn't even know I wanted to be a mom. Honestly, I never thought I would ever have kids. But then when I thought I was going to die, it bothered me that I'd never had a child. So I did end up having a child who is now 20 years old and a drummer. Awesome. So, and then I went back to school, I got my degree. And it was so impactful to my confidence that I went back and, not only did I get my degree, I graduated top of the class, voted the highest achiever, top grades. And that was huge because I had flunked out of college before. And when I say flunked, I'm talking I flunked the remedial math course, right? Yeah. Seriously. Like I didn't even pass the math class that you can take. I flunked, the one you have to take before you can take the real math class, which incidentally, after that happened, that's when a friend of mine told me she thought I would make a good teller at a credit union.
You're not good at math. Come to the credit union. No.
Yeah. So that's how that started,
I have a question for you, and I hope you don't mind me asking. Was there ever a point in time afterwards, maybe in the, the immediate aftermath, that you were like, I think I just need to leave the credit union, or I just this is too much, that type of thing?
Yes, absolutely. There were several of us that survived. And I remember we were sitting around the office one day. All the new people had been hired and we're sitting there and we're realizing we're going to have to change to a community charter. We're realizing we're going to have to change our name because we're suddenly in the community. There's no federal building being built again at that time. And so we're like, are we even the same credit union? It's like taking, at the time, I remember one of the guys used a football analogy. It's like you're the Dallas Cowboys, but now we've changed all the team members, the colors, the name, the stadium, and everything. Are we really even still that same team?
Yeah.
And so several people left, and I don't blame them. And there was a time period, I remember sitting at my house talking to one of my coworkers who also survived. We were very young. Okay. So we had some weird thing in our head that we thought this was going to be this amazing work comp claim. And, we were somehow going to be disabled. Right. And we were going to have to work again. Okay. We were 20. So anyway, and I remember we were making plans. I was going to go back to school and be a landscape architect, and she was going to go be a nurse. We weren't going to work. Yeah. Well, it didn't work out that way. We had to get jobs. So we said, okay, well, I guess since we got to work, we might as well stay there. So, and then after a certain amount of time passed, then it was, you can't leave because now we have all gone through this thing together, and not just our employees. Out of the 168 people who were killed, over 100 were members of our credit union. So their family members are still coming in, and lots of our members who were injured. Yeah. So now all of a sudden we've all gone through the trial together. We've buried all these people together. Now all of a sudden we've got this community that you can't walk away from. It's personal now. I remember, rebuilding the credit union became very personal because my boss was killed. She had started the credit card program, and by golly, all of a sudden it was, I'm not going to let this fail. This can't fail because if this credit union goes under, it means these people's lives meant nothing. And so it became super personal to make sure that we thrived.
I can imagine it would. It's remarkable. And I greatly appreciate you talking about it. I assume it's still got to be tough. I would like to touch on it. This came from the other podcast, and now I follow you on Instagram as well. IronMan. So you mentioned earlier, 305 pounds.
355.
355 pounds. Right. Now IronMan. Do tell.
So, I know, right? So, okay. So I get that. So it kind of goes back to getting that degree. I got that degree and it just sparked something. And all of a sudden it was like, you know what? The degree's not good enough. I want my MBA. So I go and I get an MBA. A girl who can't pass a math class gets an MBA. So my confidence is just soaring. And I'm thinking, you know what? I'm going to take a hard look at my whole life. Like I'm going to deal with the real issues here. And so it was, I got to get a healthy lifestyle. And my sister was a cyclist. And so I started riding a bike with her.
Okay.
I remember telling her, I was like, okay, I'm going to ride a bike with you, but I'm not going to wear all that weird stuff y'all wear. Fast forward to today, half my closet is spandex. But
It's the weird stuff.
yeah, right. So anyway, so it just kind of kept building. So the first thing I did was I rode my bike all the way around the lake here. And then it was like, okay, I'm going to ride my bike across the state of Oklahoma. So I rode my bike across the state of Oklahoma. And then it was, well, I think I'm going to run that marathon that they do in honor of the people that were killed in Oklahoma City. And then somebody said, well, if you just learn to swim, you could do a triathlon. So I got a coach. I learned to swim in 5 weeks. I had no idea how to swim. Learned to swim in 5 weeks and did my first triathlon. And then it was like, well, I'm going to do a longer triathlon. I kept having to take it higher and take it higher. And then the year that I knew that I was going to apply to be the CEO of the credit union that I am actually the CEO of, I knew it was going to be a very anxious year, wondering, is the board going to choose me? Are they going to go outside? And I decided that would be the year, if that's not enough change looming in my future, that would be the year that I was going to take 20 hours a week to train for an Ironman.
And that's what you did.
It takes a year to train. But I could use up all that nervous energy training. And so November 2017, I went to Tempe, Arizona, and was declared an Ironman when I finished within the 17 hours.
Was that the same month or the month after you became the CEO?
It was the same month
I was. Okay, because I'm like looking at my notes here and I'm like, I have 2017 there also. So that was a big month. So it was a big month. It's been a couple of years. Well, first of all, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Like I said, doing the research, I was blown away by it. So I was like, it's awesome and just amazing.
And just in case people wonder what that is a 2.4 mile swim followed by a 112 mile bike ride, followed by a 26.2 full marathon. And it all has to be done within 17 hours. And each of those events have time cuts along the way in those 17 hours. So it is definitely a big deal. And I'm very proud of it, obviously.
Absolutely. And that's where I didn't want to give it away. I think was it Runner's World? You were on a podcast there as well a few years back. We will link to all of that because I think people should check it out. You have an amazing story. So I do have a question. And just to kind of move forward, we just talked about it. You became CEO 2017. You're a couple of years into the gig now. What has you the most excited about the credit union today? You mentioned, it's a different place than it was 25 years ago, but if you're looking forward, what are you most excited about?
I think what I'm most excited about right now is seeing the leadership that's coming up a layer down. My generation, I had what I call old school managers, right? They're the managers who they led through, fear and intimidation. And by that, I mean do what I say because I'm the boss and I said do it. Well, now, we're training and we're teaching more about, like open book management styles. And so I believe the next layer, the next generation down, they're going to be leading through influence. And I'm really excited to see what that's going to mean, to even to our credit union, to have the younger generation stepping up and leading in a better way than maybe we were led.
That's the hope, right? You mentioned a son now. I think that's the goal of parents as well, right? Like, do a little better than I did. So
Right.
You've mentioned, and before we even started recording, we were talking about having young people around us. With the pace of change that we're seeing, how as a credit union, a community credit union, are you keeping pace with just how fast technology is changing?
So that is a real challenge for us. We are a smaller credit union, and staying on pace with the changes in technology is extremely challenging. And we're living in a world where consumers want an Amazon experience. And for those of us that are stuck on old legacy core systems, we're not being able to deliver that kind of service. So what do? How do you stay relevant? How do you manage that? And so like for us in our credit union, we're in the middle of a core search, but you've got to do more than just that. Yeah. So what we're doing is we're trying to find we're looking for specific segments in our community that we can reach out to, that we can show support to, that maybe haven't had, that support in the past. Like, for example, this summer we rolled out a hashtag Bank with Pride promotion, and we've gotten very involved with our LGBTQ community. Things like that. We're working with CUInsight so that we can serve our Hispanic community better. So things like that, along with the technology.
It's the people helping people, right? So
right. That's exactly right.
We've seen a lot. CUInsight's now about 11 years old. And in that time, credit unions, quite honestly, have been cut in half. I find it alarming. Is there something that you think credit unions, we're not talking like in the future, but like a mindset or something that needs to change just to stay relevant, or, just one of those beliefs, I guess, that maybe you were just talking about that we're all holding on to that.
Right. I do believe some change needs to happen. And, for me, I think there's a couple of things. One, I go back to the younger generation. I think we need younger, more diverse people on our management teams and on our board. Because if we keep thinking the way we've always thought, and if we keep doing things the way we've always done them, we're going to be in trouble. We've got to be relevant. And we also need to go back to, who are we? Like, what? Let's go back to our roots. And in fact, to that point, of course, our friend Brent. So he has obviously talked me into doing DE next year. So
welcome to the club.
I'm going to be doing DE strictly for that reason, because I feel like it's important that we do kind of go back to our roots. And it sounds like that program really helps you do that. So I think if we can go back to who we are, what we're meant to do, and figure out what does that mean in today's world? Like, how does that people helping people, how does that translate now today? How can we do that now?
Yeah, I am with you on that. I'm glad to hear you're going to be a DE. I found it to be life-changing, honestly. It's just, it gave more purpose, or maybe it was direction is a good way of putting it. It's a tough thing to explain. Yeah. So I want to move on to the second part of the show that's all about leadership and life hacks. Just really pick your brain, see what lessons we can learn from you. First question, what inspired you to take the gig as president and CEO of the credit union a couple of years ago? To me, it sounds like it was something you were working your way towards for, getting your MBA and, moving up through the ranks.
Well, it did. I'm really fortunate. Our previous CEO was my mentor. Okay. She was absolutely amazing. And she saw something in me before I even saw it in my own self. So she really encouraged me. And I remember her sitting down with me years ago and saying, Amy, the leadership of this credit union does not rest with me or with everybody else you see on the team. It actually is a layer down. It's with you. And I remember at the time just thinking, what? Me, a leader? What? And then as we worked together through the years and grew, I started having faith in myself. And so originally that was, sure, it was that sort of when you're young, I want the next promotion, the next thing, you just want to advance just for the sake of advancing, right? For the challenge. That was initially my motivation. But I would say that motivation changed right before I did take the job. That had shifted.
So you mentioned the motivation switching before you took the job. How has it changed in the past 2 years?
Well, I would say, it shifted in that I was concerned about our culture, right? I have seen some other credit unions. A lot of CEOs are retiring right now in our industry. And unfortunately, you can get a bad CEO. You can get a CEO who doesn't respect or understand or care about the culture. Maybe they only care about the financials. And you have to really balance both of those. And so my concern was, I don't want someone to come into our credit union and undo everything we've worked so hard to accomplish. Our credit union is consistently voted a best places to work. We have a really great culture. It got to the point where it's like, there may be someone, I'm sure there's probably people out there that would be better at this job than me, but I know there's a lot of people that would be worse, and I know I'll do a great job. So it was sort of this passion of, I've got to do it to protect, to make sure, because I know I'll do a good job. And then now that's morphed into more than, okay, we can't stay the same. We've now got to grow. Like, we need to grow. So I'm really focused now to just really on growing our credit union. That
sounds like you have a great culture, though. Like I said, when we were in Africa, Brent was so excited to come on board with you. So how would you mentioned this earlier about the, that kind of older school leadership style that I think both you and I probably came up under, earlier in our careers. How would you describe your leadership style today?
So what I strive to, we all think we're doing something and we really hope that we're hitting the mark somewhere close. I would say the closest description would be open book management.
Okay.
Would be my style. So I just really believe in being transparent and leading through influence and really trying to involve everyone as much as possible into the decisions that are affecting them.
So the flip side of that question, how would your team describe your leadership style?
So you know what? I actually asked my team. I said, I'm just curious, how would you describe it? I didn't tell them what I thought mine was. And they kind of gave me a deer in the headlight look like, oh, great. Do I really want to say it? And so, but it was kind of cool because the words that came back were collaborative. I heard that word several times, motivator, and somebody said democratic. So
it's not bad words, that's for sure. Speaking of your team, what's the greatest strength that, of your team at Allegiance Credit Union?
We have the best team. Like, that is not just a canned answer. Like, we're on Skype right now. You can see my face.
You lit up when I asked you about your team.
We have a fantastic team. We are very diverse. Like, we're very different, but our culture and the way we work together, we trust each other. So we can debate something out. We can really debate it out heatedly, but we still have each other's back. Like, we're a team. And that's great because we really don't like to have silos here. So that's good, but it's also bad because it means you're in each other's backyard a lot. And it means you can step on toes and you're getting in everybody else's business because, we're working together. And so it's really important to have that trust and have that good teamwork. We do things like, I choose a book every year and we do sort of our own little book club. So we've done things like last year we did the 4 Disciplines of Execution and we do it together. And then this year was really interesting. We did Radical Candor. And that is a really interesting book because just going through it together, you end up really talking about kind of vulnerabilities and things, and it builds trust. And then we've identified our book for next year, Getting Things Done, is going to be our book that we're going to do next year. So
you're adding books to my list, which I absolutely love. Again, sticking with your team, is there something that your team has heard you say so many times they can finish your sentence?
No, I asked them this question as well. No, apparently I talk so much and say so many different things. No. Now, in my mind, I think I say all the time that it's not so much what happens to you in life that matters. It's how you choose to respond to it. And I do say that a lot, but it's usually when I'm out speaking. Yep. So I guess I don't say it as much in my own backyard at home, but I say that a lot to other people.
Is there something when you think back earlier in your career that, like, that mistake that you made, and I like to ask this question kind of in a twofold, or one that now that you are a leader, is there a mistake that you see young leaders make?
I do. I made this mistake and I see young leaders make it. And that is trying to be the boss, right? When you first get put in that supervisor role, you feel so insecure. It's the fraud thing. Somebody's going to figure I don't know what I'm doing. And you're just trying to command respect, right? So you try to do it by leveraging the I'm the boss card, and it's counterintuitive, but you don't need to do that. You can sit back. You can be kind. You can be compassionate. You don't have to walk around flashing that boss card to correct job performance or to get your team in line or to get them to accomplish great things. You can do that stuff while being collaborative and compassionate and involved with them.
I think that's so interesting. A lot on the podcast that we've talked about the idea that I think we all did it when we were younger. We had to try to prove how smart we were, right? You just like, I'm the boss. That's the way it goes. So, hey, do you have a memorable failure that has led to future success for you? That one that kind of in hindsight, you're like, it sucked at the time, but I'm glad it happened.
Yeah. So I have made many mistakes. I've been in my credit union for 32 years. So that just tells you how many years worth of mistakes there are behind me.
Built up, right?
There is one that I really do consider to be a significant failure. And it's really only been recently that I even feel comfortable talking about it because, when you're fresh on a failure, it's embarrassing,
Yeah, that stings.
So I hit a point in my career just a few years before becoming CEO, actually, where I sort of hit this point where I thought, okay, I've advanced as high as I can go, right? I can't go any higher. And I really didn't think there was going to be an avenue to even become CEO at some point. So it was sort of this, okay, well, I guess this is it for me. And I allowed myself to slip into a complacent place, which I promised myself after the bombing that I would never do again. I said, I'm never going to be complacent. I said, I'm not going to do that. And I found myself just spending about a year where I was really not bringing my best self to work. And around the time, it had been about a year where I had just previously gone through some personal problems and stuff, but just really, I was showing up, but I wouldn't bringing my best game.
So how did you get through that?
I was on a bicycle ride and met my now husband, and he was a factory worker. So when he's sitting there talking about his team at work and how they're just killing it every day, and this guy's a factory. He's working rotating 12-hour shifts, and he's excited and engaged at his job. And I felt so ashamed that I'm sitting here in a C-suite coasting. Right.
Yeah.
And so I confessed that to this guy because, he didn't work with me. So I'm just like, gosh, I used to be that way. I said, I used to be that way. I used to be really. And I was like, but I haven't been lately. And he gave me this advice that was so simple, but it hit me in such a strong way. He just said, well, you need to change that. That's all he said. You need to change that. And it was like that. Those words just rang in my head. And I thought, you know what? He's right. I got to change this. This is bad. My whole life I've been engaged and I've been and this is not good. So I decided I need a shot in the arm, and I kind of asked around some people, and I went to Q's CEO Institute.
Okay. Yeah.
And I went for 3 years, and it was the shot in the arm that I needed. It brought back my passion, and it launched me forward. I was so engaged after that. But I'm glad that failure happened. And the reason I'm glad it happened is I really can now speak to people that go through that because I don't think I'm alone.
Yeah,
I know I'm sharing that failure. And if you're listening and you're thinking, well, gosh, I've never done that, you will. Yeah. At some point, you're going to hit a point in your life where you'll have burnout or something like that. And I'm really glad to know that you can get through it and kind of have some things to help other people when they get stuck.
I talked to a lot of people this year about the fact that doing this podcast has given me a shot in the arm because, we're 10, 11 years into CUInsight. Things kind of become ordinary, right? Right. But now having these conversations, and I've said it over and over again, the questions, they're scratch my own itch questions a lot of the time. So when I'm asking, what do you do here? A lot of the time, that's just because that's what I'm thinking about. So, right. But it's, I love hearing that. And I think that's great. I know we know the folks at Q's very well. John was one of our first guests on the show. And to me, something like CEO Institute always seems like you also get a great group of people that you're going through that you can then, your tribe kind of grows, right?
Yes,
you make good friends over those 3 years. So it's a beautiful thing. It might be the advice from your husband, but has there been a piece of advice or a life lesson that you've received that you just keep going back to over and over again?
So the piece of advice I go back to over and over again was sort of self-learned. And it's that old cliche. It's not so much what happens to you. It is how you choose to respond to it. And I tell myself that all the time, because bad things happen to good people. Things happen to us that aren't fair, or things happen that we bring on ourselves. Like we launch a new initiative and we have high hopes. We think we're going to grow our membership or something, and we do that thing and it doesn't work. Right. Well, how do you respond to that? Don't focus on that. Focus on what are you going to do now? How do you choose to respond to it? Because that's really the important thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. To move on from the failure, right? If you have a free day, there's nothing on the calendar. I was really interested to ask you this question because I know you have a lot of passions outside of credit unions. So what does a free day look like? What do you do to recharge? What does work-life integration look like to you?
Well, there's no such thing as a work-life integration to me nowadays. I mean, really, we're one whole self. And, sometimes we were dealing with personal stuff at work. And come on, I think every person I know, when they go home and they're on their personal time, you're wrapping up work projects or checking work emails or whatever. So, but if I carve out time for myself, which I do, I am very passionate about making sure I take care of myself. Because if I'm take care of myself, then I've got plenty to go around to everybody else. And so what I'm going to do, how I'm going to recharge is my husband and I are going to go on about a 60-mile bike ride.
Wow.
And that is how I recharge. I love riding my bicycle. And once a year, I ride my bike every year across the state of Oklahoma. It takes 7 days. And it's amazing to get away with nothing but you powering yourself on your bicycle. And then if I'm not doing that, I love helping people. So I do that through speaking. So I like to give motivational talks to try to help other people kind of get unstuck in their lives and kind of spur them on to achieve their goals.
Is there a place people can reach you for that? I want to make sure we link to it in the show notes as well, because you have an amazing story.
Yep, amydowns.org.
All right, we will link to that, and I hope people check it out and get to see you speaking all over the place. Something that struck me, I had multiple questions from your answer there. So on the bike ride, the 7 days across the state, is that an organized thing you do with a group or a team, or is it something you're just off on your own?
It's actually a very long-standing organized ride called Oklahoma Free Will.
Okay.
It's to bring tourism into our little bitty small towns. So it goes through the very, very small towns in Oklahoma.
That's very cool. And now, did your husband ride before you met, or is that how you met, or did he?
That's how we met.
Okay.
Right.
So,
no, he rides too, and that's how we met. Mm-hmm.
That's fantastic. I'd like to get to the last part of the show, the rapid fire questions. Have a little fun with you here. The questions are rapid. Your answers do not have to be. Do you remember the first time you got into trouble, like memorable trouble, something you can share with us?
Yes, I do. I was talking too much in school. Imagine that. And I got talked too much and got separated from my friend. And that's back in the day where if you got in trouble at school, you got in trouble also when you got home.
Yep.
So yeah, that was a big deal.
What grade was that?
I think it was in first grade.
Oh, it was early.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And it was a theme that would repeat for the rest of my life.
All the way through. Do you have any daily routines that if you don't do, your day just feels off?
Okay. So I will now be labeled as a freak. So I am very intentional with my morning routine. So this is serious business for me. I'm obsessive about it, actually. So I believe how you spend your morning determines your success each day. So here's how it goes. 3 a.m., my alarm goes off. And yes, I just said 3 a.m. That's why I said I'm going to be labeled as a freak. That's okay. So 3 a.m. alarm goes off. By 3:30, I'm getting coffee. And I am writing in something that's called the 5-minute habit journal. I highly recommend it. And then I do what is called the daily pages habit. You write 3 daily pages. So I do that.
I do the same.
Then I review my life goals and I make sure that I'm doing 3 things today that are going to move toward those life goals. At 4:30, I arrive at the gym, and the gym thankfully is less than 5 minutes from my house. So 4:30, I arrive at the gym and I work out lifting weights for an hour. Of course, listening up to my hype music to get myself pumped for the day. By 5:40, I am back home and I'm either listening to CUInsight, Focus Leader, Ed Milet, whatever my podcast is I'm listening to, or my Audible book while I get ready for work. And by 6:30, I am at my desk at work.
I have to ask you this question, and it was one that I asked Tansley Stearns on the podcast too, because she talked about her early mornings. What time do you go to bed?
So I do go to bed around 7 or 7:30. And I also get off work. I also make myself leave at 3:30. So I really only put in 8 hours. I work 6:30 in the morning till 3:30. And I do that so that I can go ride my bicycle. Or if I have a speaking engagement, I can manage both of those things and then later check back in before I go to bed on work issues. And then, yeah.
I am with you on the morning pages. You're the first person on the podcast so far that I've shared that with. That is my routine. You know, it's from The Artist Way and the Tim Ferriss Show and all that type of stuff, right?
Yes.
So, but I was just talking to Jill this morning because I started a new journal, and it's Two things get me, I don't know why, they're very nostalgic for me, but it's like finishing a journal and starting a new one, and when my pen runs out of ink. So
look at this. So here's my brand new one.
Oh, see, first page. It's so great.
Page.
Right. I know. See, between you and I, Moleskine should sponsor us. I used to say that on the podcast all the time. So I love it. Yeah, that is me. We'll link to the morning pages too, so other people can check it out. It's been life-changing for me. The random question, and I'm going to switch this up a little bit. I will ask you, what's the best album of all time, the one you can listen to from front to back, but also I want to know what your hype music is from your workouts.
Oh, no. Oh, great. So best music of all time is Def Leppard, Hysteria.
Awesome.
Hands down. So my hype music, oh my gosh. Okay, so lately I've kind of been on a kick of No Excuses by Meghan Trainor.
Okay.
I like Fighter by Christina Aguilera.
Yep.
Back in Black by AC/DC.
That's always a classic.
Yep. And I've got a couple of them here. I don't even know who these people are that do it. Beast Mode and Warrior. I have no idea, but you get the idea, right?
Yep. That's for the hour workout. So you mentioned a couple of books, and I think that's such a cool thing that you do at the credit union where everybody reads a book each year. Jill and I are both huge readers. We have a stack of books at home. And most of it's people recommend to us. And so we're trying to work our way through. Is there a book over time that either you've gifted people or you recommend and you think everybody should read?
So I'm super passionate about books as well. I'm not very good at reading, so I'm an Audible person. So I'll do Audible and I can listen to that while I'm working out or my commute or whatever. But I consume books like crazy through Audible. So usually whatever book I've just read is I'm usually hyped about and I'll be telling people. But if I was going to go to like more of a classic, like what's kind of stood the test of time type of deal, sort of an all round really good, I would say The Traveler's Gift by Andy Andrews. He travels through time and learns 7 life lessons by meeting historical figures through traveling through time. So it's a really good book that touches on history, factual history, and then just these good life lessons, a fable type story.
You just added to my pile. I have not read that book. So as you've gotten older, what's become more important to you? And I'd say that this is my favorite part of the question. What's become less?
So what's become less, and I think this probably resonates with everybody in the 40, 50 and up crowd, is we don't care what people think anymore so much, and that's a huge blessing, right? We start becoming that person that we really don't care what they think. What I do care about is design your life, dream big, right? If I could tell that younger person something, I would say, don't go to college or take that job because it's what your parents or somebody else wants you to do. What do you want? What makes you happy? And go do that thing. Go figure out what you need to do to go do that thing. But dream big. We've forgotten how to dream, especially by our age. We've either been knocked down so many times or whatever that we've just packed it away and figured, no, this is my lot in life. And I am here to tell you, I changed so many things at age 40 in my life that I'm like, no, it's not too late.
I am with you on that. To me, it's living intentionally, and many people who know me know I love to travel, and I've intentionally designed a life that allows me to do that. And then they're shocked to find out when I was 38, I went to my first ever country outside the United States, and I'm 45. And now it's been, 40 more since. So it's, but it was a intentional thing that,
right.
You were speaking my language. I love it. I love it. I love it. People need to have you out to speak. There's a question that I don't send. I know you've listened to the podcast, but when you hear the word success, who's the first person that comes to mind?
Wow. I don't know. You really threw me for that. Rachel Hollis. And the reason I say that is because she's just now hitting, the screen. She wrote, if you're familiar, she's written 2 books, Girl, Wash Your Face. The second one is Girl, Stop Apologizing. She has an event called Rise that's just huge. It's just selling out like crazy. And the reason I say her is because she had to self-publish. Nobody wanted to publish her book. So she went out and self-published, and she's one of those stories, right? Where she goes out, she self-publishes, she's built her own social media following, and the girl has exploded. And I look at that, and this is somebody who, looks to everybody else like she's just been an overnight success, but she hasn't.
The hustle.
Spent years doing her thing, hustling, and then got a break. And so she comes to mind because I just recently read the book, and yeah.
That's perfect. The reason I love that question so much is because we all define success differently. So it can be Rachel Hollis, it can be Oprah, it can be someone's mom.
Right, yeah.
So
that's right. Or it could be you. Yeah.
Absolutely. So thank you again, Amy. I don't want to take up too much of your time. I thank you so much for sharing your story. And also I've absolutely loved the conversation of the leadership and the life lessons and your routines. I think it's fantastic. The last question I have for you is, do you have any final thoughts or anything you'd like to share with our listeners?
I think I would just kind of sum up kind of what you and I think both are saying and what we've been saying, and that is resist complacency. So you are alive. You're alive. You've got a lot to be grateful for. So take a look at your life, and if you're not where you want to be, then change it. Change it. Live intentionally.
I absolutely love it. I know when we were talking before, you're, let's call it, more active on Instagram. So is @AmyOn2Wheels the best way if people have additional questions of you? Or
that's it.
There we go. So we'll try to get you some followers. All your links and contact information will be in the show notes. I thank you very much. I already know the title for this episode just from our conversation. So that's always a good sign. I'm going to be writing that down right away. But thank you so much, Amy. This has been such a pleasure for me. I look forward to talking to you again soon, hopefully. And I hope you have an amazing day.
Awesome. Thank you.